morning. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Linda Fippin, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. We are happy you have joined us this morning, whether you are here in person at Westside, streaming this service over YouTube, or watching at a later time. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, or however you identify yourself, you are welcome. I'm sure some of you came or tuned in this morning expecting to hear Elizabeth Corbett talk about the Worthy Now program. Unfortunately, Elizabeth is not able to be here today, so the Westside worship team will be presenting this service about the traditions surrounding the Jewish holiday of Passover. This was all a bit last minute, so there are some changes going on in the order of service, so bear with us as we work through this. Before we get started in the service, I do want to point out that you can find announcements printed in the order of service if you're here in person, or they've been scrolling on the screen if you have been watching on YouTube. I do also want to remind everyone that next Sunday is Easter Sunday, and we will be having our flower communion. If you plan to attend in person, please bring a flower or two to share. And if you're watching at home, you can surround yourself with some flowers. Does anybody else have an announcement?
Hello, the pledge drive is starting today, and I have pledge forms ready to give out, so I would appreciate if you would take a few moments to let me give you your envelope before you leave today. And you may have noticed in the Wednesday announcements that we will have this year a canvas luncheon, and it will be the third Sunday in April. So it will be provided. May ask a few people for desserts, and we'll look forward to that too. There you go. Thank you.
So I've asked the Westside Choir to come up and lead the congregation in singing our gathering music. Yes?
It's 38, not 1.
Yes, I know, and I did put 38, I think. It is not page 38 in your hymnal, Morning Has Broken. If y'all can come up.
Yes, please stand as willing and able. You're going to have a note?
I know. Oh, yeah, we have a note. Okay. I'm sorry, this is a high one.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the springing, fresh from the word. Sweet the rays do fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, spring in completeness where God's feet passed. Mine is the starlight
ask Suzanne Molnar to come and invite our singing bowl to sound.
My voice is a little low, but I'm not David Howell. We're just messing around with the order of things.
Well, Judy Burgett was going to do our chalice lighting this morning, but if any of you looked up and saw the traffic, the eastbound traffic on I-40, she's stuck in that somewhere. So Ellen Greenwood has graciously offered to do the chalice lighting.
And I have asked Sherry Boudry to come and light our chalice for us this morning. And Sherry is also going to light our 2 community candles. One of these for the lives that were lost in the school shooting in Nashville for the students and the staff of the Covenant School. And the other one for all the teachers and students who have to go into school situations every single day, not knowing at all if they will be safe. We will light these candles for them and hold all of these people in our hearts. For our chalice lighting words, I found some words by Dillman Baker Sorrells. Now, this is a name that won't mean a lot to most of you here, but a few of us do remember Dillman. Dillman was the first settled minister of Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. And when I first came to Westside, my first Sunday to attend Westside over in the storefront on Kingston Pike was the day that she announced that she would be leaving. So I did not get to know her as well as some people did, but she was very beloved. And she wrote these words, which are available on the UUA's worship web. For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, and to be alive in our present.
Now I'm going to ask David Howell to come up for an opening reading.
Yes, as you can plainly see, I am not Suzanne Molnar. So, I've been thinking lately, in a world just filled with information and misinformation, who and or what to trust, a very difficult question. And when I was looking for a reading to open today's service, I thought how difficult that must have been for the Jews in slavery in Egypt, who were asked to leave that place, leave that condition, strike out into the wilderness, which, according to their stories, would last for 40 years before coming to the next stage of it. And if you were in Egypt like that, who and what would you trust? And their stories say that they decided to trust themselves, not so much as individuals, but as a people. and to trust their God who would guide them along the way. And so here is the reading which says that to me. Pack nothing, bring only your determination to serve and your willingness to be free. Don't wait for the bread to rise. Take nourishment for the journey, but eat standing. Be ready to move at a moment's notice. Do not hesitate to leave your old ways behind. Fear, silence, submission. Only surrender to the need of the time to love justice and walk humbly with your God. I will give you dreams in the desert to guide you safely home to the place you have not yet seen. I am sending you into the wilderness to make a new way and to learn my ways more deeply.
Well, that reading was really a good introduction to the ideas of Passover. To be honest, when I told Reverend Carroll I would put this little sermon together about Passover, I had only a vague notion of what Passover was all about. As I started to dig into various sources of information, I soon realized that I knew even less than I thought I did, and that there was a lot to know. Make that a lot to know, a whole lot to know. Far more than can be covered in one Sunday morning. So let's start with the basic story from the book of Exodus in the Jewish Torah and in the Christian Bible. There was a time when Jews were living in Egypt as free people, but the Pharaoh was afraid that their numbers were becoming too great and would overstrip the numbers of the Egyptians. So he enslaved them and decreed that all male Jewish children were to be killed. One Jewish mother hid her male infant and placed him in a papyrus basket that she set afloat in the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter found the baby boy in the rushes at the edge of the river and adopted him, naming him Moses. When Moses was grown, he killed a slave master and had to flee to the desert. There, God manifested himself in a burning bush and commanded Moses to return to Egypt and to free his people. So Moses returned to Egypt and repeatedly asked Pharaoh to free the Jews, which Pharaoh repeatedly refused to do. After each refusal, God visited a plague on Egypt: frogs, lice, cattle diseases, locusts, and so on, up until the 10th and final plague, in which God would take the life of every firstborn child in Egypt. But first, God instructed Moses to tell all the Jews to sacrifice a lamb and spread its blood around their doors so that God would pass over them and spare their firstborn. After this horrific event, Pharaoh did relent, and Moses was able then to free the Jews from slavery and lead them out of Egypt, though not without having to flee the Pharaoh who had second thoughts and pursued the Jews to his and his army's demise in the miraculously, but temporarily, parted Red Sea. Jews have been celebrating this Passover and escape from Egypt ever since. Like all religious holidays, it has its own associated traditions and practices, which vary depending on the strain of Judaism. For example, the Ashkenazi Jews, whose origin is in France and Eastern Europe, serve slightly different foods at the Seder dinners than do the Sephardic Jews, whose origin was originally Spain and Portugal, but are now mostly in North Africa and the Middle East. So Passover itself lasts 8 days, 7 days for Jews living in Israel, but that's because of a different calendar that they use. So this year for Jews outside of Israel, Passover starts at sundown on Wednesday, the 5th of April, and lasts until Thursday, sundown on Thursday, the 13th of April. But the preparations begin well before that. For one thing, there is a vigorous spring cleaning. This isn't for getting rid of the messy remnants of winter, though. The real aim is tracking down chametz, that is, leavened bread, which is forbidden during Passover. This includes bread, crackers, cookies, pasta, anything that contains leavened flour. A bit of bagel from New Year's Day breakfast lurking behind the toaster has to be ferreted out and disposed of. If you've been to the grocery store recently, you've probably seen prominent displays of the flat cracker-like unleavened bread matzah. But not just any matzah, it's Passover matzah. Regular matzah may have been made with flour ground from wheat kernels that have been soaked for long enough to allow them to ferment and become leavened. This is okay for the rest of the year, but not for Passover. The reason this unleavened bread is eaten is to remember that the Jews had to leave Egypt so precipitously that they did not even have time to wait for their bread to rise. So matzah has a significant role in the Seder dinners, which take place on the first and second evenings of Passover. These dinners are not just meals, though. There are actual 15 elements of the dinner set out in a text called the Haggadah. These include ritual washing of hands, blessings, retelling of the Passover story, and eating symbolic foods in a particular order, drinking 4 cups of wine and more. Even children participate in the rituals by asking 4 formulaic questions about the Passover. A complete description of the details of the Seder is more than can be encompassed here, but could make for an interesting religious exploration discussion. So instead, let's talk about something a little easier, the foods that are essential to the Seder meal. One of the first things you might see on the Seder table is a special plate with separate sections holding small amounts of 5 or 6 symbolic foods associated with the Seder. There is karpas, usually parsley or sometimes celery or even cooked potato. This may symbolize spring or perhaps the early, easier years of the Jews in Egypt when they were free. But it is dipped in salt water or vinegar to represent the tears of the enslaved Jews. Maror, or bitter herbs, usually horseradish, symbolizes the bitterness of slavery. Charaset, a sweet paste of fruit and nuts, represents the mortar used by the enslaved Jews for construction of Pharaoh's buildings. In an interesting modern update, Ben & Jerry's apparently offers a charaset ice cream. Another element is zeroa, a roasted lamb shank bone, just a bone, that represents the sacrifice of the lambs at the time of the Passover. Beitzah, a roasted egg, may represent the cycle of life, but there are other interpretations as well. In fact, there are other interpretations of almost all of the elements. Lastly, there's hazret, which is another bitter herb. Usually it's romaine lettuce or the bitter ends of romaine lettuce, or another bitter lettuce like escarole. Some people omit this from the Seder plate altogether. So people at the Seder dinner don't actually eat the food that's on this plate, but the karpas, maror, and charaset are components of the actual Seder dinner and its rituals. And near the Seder plate is a stack of 3 matzahs. The middle one of these is broken in half, with the smaller piece being put back between the other 2. The larger piece, called the afikoman, is wrapped in cloth and hidden in another room by one of the adults. Later, the children are sent to look for it, with the finder getting a small prize. Seder dinners can go on for hours, and kids are fidgety, so you can see the sense in this practice. So after all of the ritual, there are actually these 15 practices and rituals that go through the dinner, and the last element of the dinner are the words said in Hebrew, or sometimes sung, next year in Jerusalem. So while the rest of the Seder focuses on remembering the past, the final words express hope for the future and a return to the Jewish homeland of Israel. It was a very long time before that hope came to fruition. At the completion of the dinner and its rituals, a fifth cup of wine, there are 4 served during the dinner, is placed on the table, and the front door is opened for the prophet Elijah, who it is said may visit those hosting the Seder dinner. I got to wondering, the practice of hiding matzah for the kids to find and leaving a cup of wine for Elijah have an odd resonance, for me at least. Could the hidden matzah and the cup of wine somehow be linked to our own traditions of hiding Easter eggs and leaving Santa some milk and cookies? Probably not, but hide and seek and hospitality for a mysterious visitor have deep cultural roots, as do the traditions of Passover. Thank you. Okay, so we're now going to receive an offering for the support of Westside, its people, its work in the community, and in the wider world. We have a new Share the Plate partner this month, starting in April, and that's going to be Worthy Now. This is the program of correspondence with imprisoned people that's called Worthy Now that Elizabeth was going to talk about. And we do hope that she will be able to present this at some time soon in the future. If you'd like to learn more about it, they do have a website. It's worthynow.org. So in the meantime, your generosity is much appreciated.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know this, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know it. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Oh yeah,
As we do from time to time, we will offer this time for those here and those online to share their joys and concerns. If you're here in person, you can come up to the front and we'll hand you a microphone and you can state your joy or concern, and we will light a candle for you. If you prefer not to come up front, just raise your hand, we'll bring a microphone to you. If you're watching on YouTube, please put your joy or concern in the chat, and we will read it. We may try to struggle with these technical difficulties. We will turn off the recording function so that what you say here will be heard by the people in the room, the people watching on YouTube now, but will not be posted for posterity on the World Wide Web. Anyone like to come up and share something? Wayne.
My name is Dwayne Krager, and ever since I've had COVID a year ago in January, I've had difficulty with fears and depression. But there happens to be a medicine for it, and I have been taking it in the last couple months. And my mind has cleared up, and I'm able to go on. I celebrated my 90th birthday on Saturday, and I also celebrated my father's 90th birthday, but we knew that it was his last. And this depression had me to the point where I was thinking, this is going to be my last birthday, but I'm going to be around a while. Don't buy flowers yet.
Anyone else?
I have two things I'm happy about with my family in upstate New York. My younger daughter, who is now 57, yesterday was her last day at work. She quit. They were downsizing and, offering who would voluntarily leave, sort of thing. So she took that deal, and now she's excited, looking for a new career. In her youth, I'm sure she remembers this, but when she was in middle school, the librarian was her idol. And she's always had this secret desire to be a librarian. And so now she's looking into jobs to be a librarian as a second career. And the other thing that makes me happy is that her oldest child, my grandson, is going to come down and see me at the end of May. Now, I just think that is remarkable that a grandchild would get on a plane and fly down here to visit their grandmother. I mean, I just feel so honored.
Well, if the grandmother is Judy, I could understand it. Now, my grandmother, I wouldn't have done that.
I'm Chris Edkins. I have a joy. Janet and myself will be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary on Tuesday. So thank you. Oh yeah, we're going on a trip to Hawaii for our anniversary. So.
I have a joy too. It's one of those amorphous ones. As most of you know, my younger child is trans, female to male trans. That is really difficult in so many ways, but I think almost the biggest difficulty is finding a partner. Really. Being gay is hard. Trans is really hard. But Mo has been seeing a woman now for a couple of years. Woman lives in Oakland, Mo lives in Portland, Oregon, so they don't spend all their time together, but it seems like it's pretty stable, and I'm just so happy for him because it's been so hard.
Anybody else? I'm going to light one final candle for anyone who has joys and concerns who've not been expressed. Well, actually, I will say, I'm going to say a little something about what you said. What you said, Suzanne, is that the court stopped the anti-trans, the anti-drag law, so that was, I think, worth sharing. All right. So since Passover is overlapping with Easter week, I thought we could have some closing words for Easter. These come from the UUA Worship Web, and the author is Alex Holt. For all those who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, may this day be another affirmation of divine love and promise. For all those who see the eternal story of new spring and life beginning anew, may you breathe deeply of a season of promise and hope. For all who are experiencing despair and hopelessness this Easter, may you find in the darkness of depression a doorway to light and warmth that offers you freedom. For all of us, together we can do what no one isolated person can do. Rolling the heavy stone aside reminds us we are far more powerful than we ever could be on our own. Our offering of strong hands to help our prayers made real. Let us begin again in love. Thank you. Go in peace, go in power. Sure.